Thank you so much for all coming out tonight to watch Share. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce the writer-director Pippa Bianco and cast members Rhianne Barreto and JC MacKenzie.
These are tall, very tall.
I wanted to start by asking you, Pippa, about the genesis of this film being from a short film. Did you always see the short film as a calling card and a story that you intended to develop into a feature?
Yeah, I actually had the idea for the feature first, and then was not sure how I would convince people to give me millions of dollars. So I made a short version first. But yeah, I had the idea for the feature first.
And I think one of the things that comes across as really important with the story is that Mandy's character is assaulted by people that she knows and violated by them. At what point did you know that you wanted that to be the theme that you were telling, because that is the most common instance of sexual assault and sexual violence?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that was kind of always integral to the idea that it would be, because it is most often someone you know. And also I think what's happening to me in the film is actually more complicated than just sexual violence in terms of her relationship with all the other people, or what she thinks may or may not have happened for the majority of the film isn't necessarily fall into that rubric for a long time. But yeah.
And Rhianne, I think I wanted to ask you a little bit about your specific performance, because what's so remarkable about it is it's so internal. Like, we learn so much about your character without ever hearing any words. Did that present any unique challenges in your craft and the way that you were performing that caused you to approach it differently?
Thank you. It meant I had a lot of play, and it was, not speaking is a great opportunity to really listen, and have a reason to really listen. And I think not knowing basically, I mean, I knew what was going to happen because I read the script, but not knowing, as an actor, as Mandy, meant that, you could be really active in each scene, and not until the end is it, really the truth that comes out. And then that's kind of such a purging of like emotion, because she's really she's quite stoic for most of it. And only in privacy is she really, releasing her tears. And I think it's really, beautiful writing from Pippa.
Which brings me to the dialogue and the way that you so successfully make it feel very naturalistic. You have characters talking over each other. At what point did you realize that you wanted that to be the structure of the dialogue? Because you also capture teenage speak in such a real way as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was written in. I tend to think that, I think a lot of times the only reason that dialogue feels fake is because it doesn't overlap. I think that I come from an Italian-American family, so we're constantly yelling over each other. So I couldn't imagine a dinner table scene in which people had clear lines. But yeah, I think practically it tends to be a little bit more difficult to figure out how you're gonna shoot, which maybe that's the reason why. But yeah, I tend to think that was definitely written in, which lines would sort of overlap. And then there was tons of, I love to embrace improv too on the day, and to give, these brilliant actors room to play, and go beyond what's on the page as well. So, yeah.
And JC, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your relationship on screen with Poorna, who plays your wife. You guys have such an incredible dynamic, and it's so fantastic the way that both of your characters immediately believe and support their daughter, and they never question any of her behavior. Did you have conversations with her about how the two of you wanted to play off of each other as parents? Because it really doesn't come across like a stereotypical parent-teenage relationship with your daughter.
Oh, thanks. That's nice. Yeah, I mean, I immediately connected with Poorna when it was a little scary and daunting because I just seen her in the HBO series. What's it called?
The Night Of.
The Night Of. And she was amazing in that. And so I was a little intimidated. I was gonna play opposite her, but we connected almost immediately. And we think the exact same aesthetic in terms of acting and Pippa's wonderful direction. I know we were on the right path. The first conversation I had with Pippa, which was, listen, if you feel uncomfortable saying the lines, or they're not coming out of your mouth, or they don't feel natural, make them your own, And she's into improvisation, which is just for me, just like I'm not Robin Williams, but you know, it's nice to sort of have the looseness on set to and sometimes you don't change the lines. Often you don't, because her dialogue is so specifically muddled in a lifelike way, which was so exciting to read initially. Anyway, Poorna was just a genius to work opposite, and Rhianne. I mean, we're all really good friends now, and we have been right from the week one. So, which was, I guess, a year and a half ago. When did we shoot this?
Who knows?
2 years ago.
Too long.
Who knows? Anyway.
I also think one of the unique challenges for your role and your character that often presents itself for actors is when you don't see that character's full backstory and full history on screen. So how much did you feel like you needed to create that? And did you and Pippa have conversations about what you thought his background was?
Did we, Pip?
A little bit, like basic facts.
Yeah, like I was confused at first. Am I a construction worker?
Carhartt.
Yeah. But no, there was, I generally don't get roles like this. I play an asshole and a lot of dickish lawyers and sociopaths. So this was an opportunity for me to, just be a regular guy, and I didn't know what to bring to it other than, an ability not to be quippish and funny all the time, which was kind of liberating, if you can open up yourself enough to be able to do that. And this director is amazing with actors. So.
I also similarly wanted to ask you, Rhianne, about the conversations that you and Pippa had together in determining what sort of teenager is Mandy going to be? How is she going to respond to each of these different pieces of information as her journey goes throughout the film?
God, it's really hard to remember. It was quite a while ago. I think initially, coming from a theatre background and just as a geek background of being I have to do all the research. It was what's her favorite color? But also that stuff sometimes isn't useful. And I think for this character, the approach became more, learning basketball and learning, American culture and American accent. And it was a lot of listening to murder podcasts and, not that murder's a thing. It's more just the American accent.
Great podcast. My favorite murder.
My favorite murder. We love you, Karen and Georgia. And so, it was more that and learning almost what she loses and really remembering, the reality of being a teenager. Because I was 19, so I felt super old. I wasn't old.
That's the most teenage thing.
I'm so old. But no. God, it's really hard to remember. But yeah.
I also loved reading that part of your method was getting very close to your co-stars that were playing your classmates, and then once you were on set, kind of intentionally distancing yourself from them. What was it that made you approach that specific choice?
I think this character in this story, I knew it was, I knew how much research Pippa had done, and I knew that these people exist, and I knew that people would watch this, and if I fucked it up, it would, if it was bad, it was probably because of me, because everyone else is great. So it was so much pressure that I was I have to do everything I can to make this good. And before shooting, I would go and play basketball with them, learn their favorite snacks and bring them to set and invite them around to my house and create the history that we would have had as teenagers being at school together. And then on set, not really having lunch with them and not really talking as much. And then they all started to have and really spending time with this guy, which was great. But then they all started to have these private jokes. And then actually we shot the prom scene kind of last. And I think there was this you could feel the weird animosity or the weird I'm so disconnected because I've been with my parents for so long and that's the reality of the character. And, Nick was so great about it, and we definitely asked him if that was, we told him, and he was totally okay with that. Now we're really good friends, but yeah, that wasn't really answering the question, but yeah.
No, it was, absolutely. I also wanted to ask about the specific research that you all did on, because the story is not really just about the moment that happens, it's really about the trauma and the PTSD that comes afterwards. So what was some of the research for each of you that you felt was important for your role, either directing or performing in the film?
Well, I actually felt pretty strongly that I didn't want them to do too much research about other cases or other people, especially when it came to watching anything on video, because I think I guess I felt that for each of them, this is the first time. You know, that they have no preparation for what they're going through as a family. They had no anticipation of this. She doesn't know what happened to her. So I felt that like over familiarizing themselves with the end of the story wouldn't actually be helpful. So a lot of the work that I think we did together would be more what Rhianne's talking about. Like I feel like rehearsal time for me is more useful in terms of me getting to know them and the kinds of ways, you know, they do and don't like to work and how I can best be in service of their craft. And then also just creating space for them to have relationships, like booking bowling nights for all the kids or movie nights for them to just hang out and develop kind of like, you know, or we had certainly like time for the three of you to spend as a family, which you guys really like took and ran away with. Was getting like photos of them with like highlighted scripts, like rereading, being like, what does this line mean? I was like, put those scripts away. What's going on? Definitely terrifying level of note taking from Poorna. But yeah, so I felt she's incredible.
She's a genius.
But she loves to prep. So I felt actually that, you know, like the research, the burden was on me to do as much research as possible, talk to as many people as possible to whom this touched on their lived experience, and then to put the specifics on the page that I thought were relevant and let them run with it and go from there. But I don't know, you guys may feel differently. And also you did all sorts of stuff I don't know about, which is cool.
Yeah. I think also a really useful thing that you said to me on set was don't look at the action of like, don't, you know, if you can't cry, don't be married to that and don't feel like you have to give me, because you kind of said, you know, sometimes the action's just so that producers understand the tone of it.
More to make it readable for an executive, honestly, than as a strict direction of what I'd like you to do.
And I mean, in the end, I kind of did it anyway, but it was such a freeing thing regarding rehearsal and research. Basketball, press-ups, many press-ups, because I couldn't do any before. Can't do any now, but yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, what about you?
I didn't do any research.
Good. Good. As requested.
No, I mean, I don't know what I mean, I'm a dad already, so, you know, I know what that's like. And I can only imagine and did imagine how horrific it is to go through something like this and to try to put one foot in front of the other while at the same time dealing with the, you know, your heart goes out to these kids, you know, your children. So it was easy in that sense, and as long as you could try to be present and just service Pippa's beautiful lines and connect with the great Rhianne Barreto, you know, you were set. I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know what I'm saying.
Poorna actually, since she can't be with us, did want to hear certain tapes, like certain recordings of the voices of certain interviews I'd done. So I did share with her and no one else, because she really, I think, needed it. She needed it for I think more to appease her own sense of being prepared. So she did actually listen to some of the interviews I did.
And do the two of you remember exactly which scene it was that you auditioned for the film with?
Yes.
Could you talk about that a little?
Yeah, it was the first audition was the dummy sides, so it's not in the film. The scene of my dad in the car where I'm going, I like hooking up with people, which made that day so scary, because it's always terrifying when you get to the point where you're doing the scene that you auditioned with. You're like, it worked that time, so maybe you can crop that footage in and like VFX that, you know. So there was that. What else was there? This scene with my best friend where it's actually just a one shot, and Ava Bukowski, the insane DP, has like people walking up against, and it's just the day after I found out about the video. Yeah, and I did that with my best friend. Yeah, it was really, with my sister. It was really great. I mean, to get her script as an audition is just a dream.
Really, they're really laying it on thick tonight.
We love you.
Love
Give us
you
a
too.
job.
Give us a
Give
job,
us a job.
please.
Another job, please. One more.
I'll take a job too.
How about for you, JC?
I auditioned with the scene in the car with my daughter, and I auditioned with the hardware scene. And I was in the waiting room, and there were all these like really attractive guys with jaw lines and everything else. I thought, there's no fucking way I'm getting this part. But then it kind of loosened me up, freed me up to kind of get in there, and it didn't matter. So, and then I think, Pip, you wanted to see a little more vulnerability and or see if I had the ability to do that or something. And then I gave you a bad clip of some, I don't know, Touched by an Angel or something, where my daughter has been beheaded or something, and I'm weeping horribly, gratuitously.
Who hasn't seen that footage?
Maybe that's why I got the
Truthfully,
job.
I have no memory of that. I do remember we made a GIF. I feel like I just dated myself. We made a GIF of that scene in Vinyl where you're like, whoa, and you're like rolling off the couch with Bobby Cannavale. You're like in some kind of like, bah, and then you take a dive to the floor.
Yeah.
Was a GIF we exchanged when we were very excited about you joining the project.
Oh, that's sweet.
But I remember the audition a little differently. I remember like all these people came in and they were lovely. And then this one dude came in with his headphones fully in. You had your earbuds fully in and didn't make eye contact with me at all.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, what do you want me to do? You want to stand over here? Should I just do it? And I was like,
It's always
like,
best to
okay.
play arrogant.
didn't seem arrogant at all. I was
Oh,
like, he is ready to leave this room. I was like, he doesn't want to do this scene.
Really?
Not in a bad way.
Yeah.
We've never talked about this before.
Wow. We're doing it in front of people.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
First time. And I was blown away because I felt like what I'd written was, a scene that so easily could have been a really, melodramatic scene. And I don't even think, it was like these two men like fighting. It's one of the few scenes in the movie where people like talk about their feelings out loud,
Yeah.
So I was nervous about that scene to begin with. And you were the only person I thought who had like real awareness that their child was in the room.
Oh, yeah.
And I really felt like you were like you had to say these things, like you couldn't let this person talk to you that way, but you were fully aware that like you had a little person you were protecting who you didn't want to see you behave like that. Yeah. And I had nobody, you brought like a softness to the scene that I really didn't expect, so that by the time you really lost your shit at the end of the scene, I was like, that is a much more complicated person than I'd written on the page. So I was like, could only be him.
Thank you.
It's true. The earbud man who didn't look at me.
Oh my God. I'm going to give you money.
And I know how important it is to create an environment, whether it's in the audition room or the set, that feels really comfortable for your crew, for your cast, because you're basically the CEO of the film. In a film sense. Did you sit back and think about the type of tone that you wanted when people walked into audition, and the way that you wanted your set to run, and the way that you wanted everyone to feel as they walked on each day?
Yeah, I think particularly in the audition room, I thought about that because I feel like sometimes I'll get tapes if I'm not in the room where I hear like someone say like, oh, okay, do it again, but maybe like don't be weird this time, and like be a little sexier, like be sexier. And I'm like, oh my God, like what could anyone do with that? That's like horrifying. It's so and so I feel like it's my job at least to create the best conditions I can for someone to feel really comfortable, to ask me questions, and to feel like I'm there to support them so they can do their best work, rather than be like, you're thrown in the deep end, go, no help, that sounds very horrible. But you know what, I think actually on set, I wish, I think that's a question more for my lovely crew and team who's here and my actors about what that felt like. Because I do think, I really loved the idea that everyone I was working with was my friend. Like, I feel like the work is too hard, psychologically, logistically, emotionally. You know, it's just the work is so hard, and that if you're not surrounded by people you care about, me included, like if I don't feel like I can be vulnerable with these people and that I can say whatever weird shit pops into my head as a director, which is sometimes really weird. If I don't feel like we have that kind of trust, I won't be able to do my best work either. So, but I do think, especially because it was my first film, I don't know that, I think there was more fear for me, and I'm not so sure how that was felt or not felt by people. I certainly feel like our producers probably had less fun hanging out with me than other people. But, I hope that didn't bleed into the work we were doing. But I look forward to doing it again.
I also actually did want to ask you specifically about your producers, because you had Tyler Byrne, Carly Hugo, Matt Parker, who have all done some amazing independent films. They're all with us.
They're
right
not
here
going to
tonight.
stand. They don't want to stand. Never mind. They're here.
But I wanted to ask you about that, because they also worked with you on the short film, and what that lent you as a filmmaker, having the same creative team working with you, and how they really helped you to shape and craft the story, and what input they gave you that was important in the final version that we saw tonight.
Yeah, well, Matt and Carly actually also gave me my very first job in film. So when I was in college and still thought I wanted to like maybe paint or make photos, was like, who's going to employ me? And also I'll be alone all the time. And I went on Craigslist to find a PA job. The first set I was ever on was their set. So there was a lot of history there, and then the first teaser we ever shot for the short film, where it was me texting to like post on Kickstarter. Post isn't even the wrong word. I'm really dating myself. Tyler Byrne shot that with me, It's my thumbs and Tyler and our other friend Bill with a camera, and my siblings, my sister and brother texting, I think. So I think there was like a huge foundation of like love underneath this project that definitely like, carried through beyond the creative decisions, I think, because it's such a, for me at least, an all-encompassing, it was like years of my life that were consumed by making this film, or perhaps still are. I think there was like a lot of, really thoughtful feedback in all areas, in terms of how I was running my set or treating my crew, or, managing the workload in logistical ways, but then also in terms of, the creative, what's on the page, and, what dailies people loved and what was working. And I love personally a really collaborative process. I think like it's important to have time where like, I go away and get to be alone with what I like and what my thoughts are, because it's really hard for me to hear my own voice sometimes when there's a lot of activity. But then I think you reach a point where the only way to go beyond your limitations is to bring in critique and to surround yourself with people who are, very thoughtful, intentional, supportive people who are going to give you really targeted criticism to help you push beyond your limitations, so.
And then, Rhianne, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your visa issues that you had. So you were denied, your visa was originally approved and then denied during the Muslim travel ban, when a lot of visas were getting pushed back for absolutely no reason at all. But you ended up with Gillibrand and Warren advocating for you, and now have a 10-year visa to be able to come and go as much as you please, which is amazing. How did that change?
New York.
Firstly, congratulations on having two presidential nominees advocate for you.
I like that. I didn't know who they were. I was like, yes.
American women who are in the law system.
But I wanted to ask how that experience changed the way that you approached coming into this film, and what it meant to you at the end of the day to be part of this project, because it was already such an important piece of storytelling as it was.
Yeah. I mean, I think there was a big fear for me of not knowing what it felt like, a lot of things. Being American, I've never been sexually assaulted. Not that really Mandy remembers that, so I didn't think it was that vital anyway. I mean, Pippa kind of said it wasn't that important because she doesn't remember. But not having a familiarity with like complete lack of control, and not knowing, so going into the embassy and them saying kind of, where are you from? Britain, you don't look British. Like having that happen, and then losing a job for no for no reason that I've, done anything wrong. And that's the exact same thing for Mandy, and having all these people tell me how to speak to the embassy and how to go back in there, and, knowing that there's nothing bigger than government and law. And that's the same thing that she's kind of dealing with. I mean, mine's like a vanity project in comparison, because, I can't do a movie. It's like, that's very different to, this being your permanent life. I got to wrap the film. She never gets to wrap that experience. But yeah, no, it was really, as an actor, you have to, there's use in pain sometimes. And having that to infuse my art with more empathy, I think, made it easier to access that emotion. So yeah, it was a lot of thinking about that feeling, and how, I thought Pippa was going to recast a white American person to be it. But she didn't. She moved it to Canada instead, and we shot there. So.
She shouldn't lose her job. That doesn't make any sense. No.
It's a lot of money, but yeah, no.
Not my money. Just kidding. Cover your ears, HBO.
I also wanted to ask you, all three of you, a little bit about the weight and responsibility of this film, because what I've seen very frequently when films with important subject matters play festivals particularly, but then hit the road beyond that, is that audiences respond in a very specific way and often feel very comfortable sharing their personal stories. When did you realize that you were going to bear that specific responsibility, and how did you each approach that?
That's an interesting, I don't think and maybe this is my naivete, I don't think I really realized how many ways in which the film wouldn't be mine anymore. I think I didn't think so much about, I thought about making the film. I didn't actually think about what happened after. I feel like every film is political, and whether you intend for it to be or not, it's political. So, it's the responsibility of any artist to figure out how they want to engage with that. And ideally intentionally, I think, rather than unintentionally. And I also feel like, it's such a privilege to be able to make this work, that I think you have to, it's like the rent you pay to think about how you can be useful to other people in whatever way you can be. So I think we all thought about it in that sense, that like the movie we wanted, or the audience we most wanted to serve were people whose lived experience this was, and that this be a film that first and foremost, honored them and dignified their experience, and that they felt was worthy, of putting out into the world. But beyond that, I don't actually think I was prepared for the ways in which it becomes, it's not my film anymore. It's everybody, it's doesn't belong to me anymore. So I don't think I totally understood that until I was like, oh shit, there it is on the internet.
I don't think I know yet. I don't know till it comes out what the reality of that will be. I remember in the car, I think on the way back from set, World War II set, you were like, maybe think about maybe how many people might disclose information to you after this, because they might, see something in your performance that they relate to. Maybe I need training. I don't know. I think I'm going to look into it and think about the correct way to converse with people in the least harmful and most appropriate manner, because it's such an important subject and I never want to hurt anyone, And
I think it's the perfect time for the subject to be introduced. It's this zeitgeist. It's like it's happening. It's with the Me Too and everything else. And the film is, I think, great in that because it deals with human behavior, which is always involved in vast shades of gray, that this is a perfect example of it. There's no evil, snidely whiplash dude. There's no saintly, it's just human beings with problems trying to deal with it by putting their feet together and, and deal in a very occasionally complicated and emotionally fraught situation. So I think it's a perfect, I don't know. I think it's a great film for this period of time, so.
The film also feels like a great lesson in how to really respond to people, and that you need to listen to them as well. And I wanted to ask you, JC, what you've learned about being a male ally to women who go through situations like this, because I think that's an important discussion that we're all having culturally right now.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, some of the comments, like some of the reporters were like, oh, my phone just went off, sorry. Some of the reporters were like, is it difficult for you as a male to be dealing with a complicated subject matter like this? Like, I've never even considered something like this, I was sexually abused. I know I've talked to tons of people, shocking amount of people who were. A lot of the people in the audience might have been. It's prevalent, and it affects us all, and affects males and females, and so yeah, I don't know.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Pippa, I also wanted to ask you a little bit about the ending, because I think there's huge power in the ending that Mandy chooses for herself, and that is the more realistic ending. The majority of cases never go to trial, never see a day in court, even those that are usually don't lead to anything. Did you always know that you wanted that to be the ending, or at what point did you realize that it was important to tell that type of story?
Yeah, that ending was actually the piece I started with, that I knew that was how the film would end. Didn't know how we were going to get from A to B, but I knew that that's how we would end. And to me, I think that was so important because so many of the people in my life who have experienced something like this have chosen maybe to disclose to their loved ones, but not to, that legal action or a public platform hasn't been available to them, or hasn't been an option that felt right for them. And those people are heroes to me. I don't think there's anything less, there's nothing that's less brave or heroic in the choice to say, like, I need to go on, and this is how I'm going to do it, And so it was really important to me to dignify that choice, to make a deeply personal choice. Just because someone does one horrible thing to you doesn't mean that they then get to decide the rest of your trajectory. And that because this happens to you, you now must be an advocate or an activist, or, you must seek legal action. You must go through a lengthy court, ordeal. Like, they don't get to choose that for you. If you choose that because makes sense for you, and you want to, bear the burden of others in that way, that's incredibly brave and generous and heroic. But it's also incredibly heroic to just say, I'm going to get out of bed today, So it was really important to me to make a film that honored that choice as well.
And it really works. I wanted to ask each of you, maybe starting with you, JC, what is the aspect of being in this film, or your character or your filmmaking, that you are proudest of, and what you really hope audiences take away from your involvement?
I'm proudest of working with these people. I really am. I know it sounds like I'm blowing smoke up their ass, but I've really, Rhianne is one of the nicest, most talented people I've ever met. And Pippa is, you just don't find young directors who have an ability to speak with actors with the level of sophistication, and she's like a therapist. She's dealing with all sorts of different personalities and actors, and as she alluded to before, you gotta, what works for one doesn't work for the other. I like to be, don't talk to me too much,
Works for me.
So she instinctively knew that. Maybe I don't know. So yeah. So I'm just so enormously proud to be a part of this project. That's all I gotta say. I don't know what I'm saying.
You stole my answer. I think it would just be the people that I've met and the friendships that I've forged. Like, he's basically my dad.
It's creepy.
And
It's creepy.
yeah. So Carly, Tyler, Rabia, all of these. You don't know who they are. I'm literally could be making up names, but all these people who have made such a, they held my hand when I was crying outside an embassy, you know, through the phone. They like literally took a chance on someone that's never done a feature film before. And, you know, these are like friendships for life. Like I introduced Pippa and JC to my boyfriend. I was like, please approve. It's like that deep. So
He's great.
So yeah. The people, I think.
How about for you, Pippa?
Oh man, I'm like on the verge of
I know
tears
it's hardest
already.
for
I'm
you.
like trying to keep it together, staring at the red carpet. I can't say what this means to me. I think, yeah, it's fine. You know, this film. Wow, I'm really gonna lose it. This film, I think, was made during the course of some of the most difficult parts of my life personally, and a lot of grief in my own life. And I have no idea what that experience would have been like without the people I have around me. So I think, you know, that's, I think, actually one of the reasons why it's so hard for me to watch this film, because so much of, you know, I think for better or worse, what's going on in your life, as much as I'm like, this movie's not about me, this is a work of fiction. You know, there's so much of it that's in there, more than I'm aware of or comfortable with, actually, in a lot of ways. And so much of the pain, you know, of the experience of making the film comes up for me when I watch it. But truly, I think it ended up being a really transcendent experience because everyone gave so much. You know, I think everyone gave of themselves in the same way, you know, that I felt like I had to. You know, it was everybody laid all the cards on the table and all the pain, and, you know, and really there's a tremendous amount of love that I think came out of that, you know, that bravery from everyone. So I don't know how I would have made it through the last couple of years without it. So.
I mean, it is such a stunningly important and beautifully told story, and with amazing performances that you've commanded from your cast. So I just want to congratulate all of you. It comes out on July 27th on HBO. So please share with, not to, that was the worst use of that word.
We needed a pun. You got to lighten it up.
Please share it with all your friends. Let them know. Post about it on social media. Please support this film as much as you can. And thank you all for coming out tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you.